Hi everyone, welcome to another version of Sigi's Pu'er box here on the nannuoshan channel. As some of you might be able to see, I'm using a slightly different setup today. Please let me know if everything's fine in terms of video, in terms of audio. This one is a bit more complicated, so this is as new for me as it might be for you. So I'm just gonna wait a moment to get some feedback in chat before I continue, just to make sure everything's working properly. Let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me properly, if there are any issues with the stream and whatnot. But yeah, it's been a while. I'm back here for Sigi's Pu'er box, and I hope that we're gonna have a good time today. No sound issues. Perfect. If you can hear me, then we are officially good to go. So today, I am going to talk about this Changtai Hao 2005, as announced in the stream title and whatnot. This is going to be a new tea as the part of the Pu'er project coming from nannuoshan. Now, while I open this up, let me give you some basic facts about this tea. So it's from 2005. It was produced by the Changtai factory or Changtai Group, depending on which point in time you're at. That's something we're going to get into later. I'm going to tell you a bit about the history of the Changtai factory, about some of their production lines, but today we're mainly here to try this tea and see what it's like. So this is going to be sold on nannuoshan for 118 euros per bing, or 22 euros for 50 grams. They also have 6 gram samples available if you just want to give it a try without committing to a larger amount. However, there's not a lot in stock of this tea, so if you finish watching the stream and you think, oh, that's kind of nice, that's something I might want to try, then you might want to be quick. The material for this tea is from the Iwu region. No specific like village or area, it's just from all over Iwu, a blend of sorts. Let's see, I'm gonna go with my usual 7 grams for the teapot I'm using. There we go. Give me just a moment. Now I'm gonna put this back where it was. Okay, there we go. So here I've got these 7 grams of tea. I hope you can kind of see them on the camera. And I've already preheated my pot. So I'd say let's get right into it. Part of getting used to this new video setup here is figuring out where I can put everything. So please excuse me if things aren't perfectly aligned and whatnot. Let's go. I've already pre-boiled the water, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do the first rinse here right away. In the meantime, what's everyone been up to lately? What kind of teas have you been drinking? The volume of this teapot is 120 milliliters. Have you tried other 2005 or 2006 Changtai productions? How do they compare to this one? Well, that's hopefully something we're gonna find out today. I have had a whole bunch of 2005 and 2006 Changtai, so I should have a good basis for comparison. Okay. Hello Alexander. Welcome to the stream. Now, after the rinse, let's give this a quick smell. Okay, what am I getting here? I'm getting some herbs, some fruit. There's also maybe a very faint hint of, I wouldn't quite say smokiness, but something in that direction. Maybe woodiness, but not quite smokiness yet. What else do we have? I'm also getting this slightly like resinous aroma, which I'm gonna be very curious about. All in all, this doesn't smell like a tea that was particularly intensely stored, which, however, in the case of Changtai, can be a very good thing. So let's go ahead and do the first steep here, just to kind of see what it's like. Ah, Gabriele is also joining us. Hello, Gabriele. How are you doing today? Yes. Thank you for the compliment on my guitars. Music is another one of my hobbies. I haven't done much of it in recent years, but in the past I used to play and record a lot of music. I'm gonna pull these a bit closer to me, just to make things easier, while we are waiting for the first steep to finish. Oh, it's 120 milliliters, Gabriele, and I'm using 7 grams. That's kind of like my typical ratio. Good morning. It's good to hear that you are doing great. I also got up not too long ago. I hope that's not too noticeable, but it'll be fine. I'm gonna have some nice morning tea here to share with everyone. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna give this another quick smell just to check if something changed. No, it's still about the same. Still smells quite promising. Let me see if I can show you the color of the tea liquor here. It's always a bit dangerous in this position because I do not want to get tea all over my table. Chachi seems to help with music inspiration. That's nice. Unfortunately, I'm a bit deaf to Chachi in a lot of cases. I often don't experience it particularly strongly. But I guess that's also fine. Okay, now without any further ado, here's the first steep of this 2005 Changtai Hao with the red wrapper, as you could see from the thumbnail. Let's give this a try. I'm gonna give it a moment to like sink in properly. In the meantime, if you're interested, I think the store page for this tea is live, so if you check the description of this live stream, there should be a link to this particular tea there. So if you're curious, you could like check out what Dimitri wrote about this tea while we're enjoying it here together. Kind of see if we have like similar or very different impressions. One interesting thing that I've encountered in a couple of Changtai Bings from time to time is that your sessions can be quite different depending on which part of the Bing you're getting. So in some cases, I recall having this one 2006 Changtai that was quite heavy on the tips overall, but then there were some sessions that barely had any, whereas other were just almost entirely tips, and the differences between those two sessions were really large, despite that all being the same Bing. Okay. Now after I've taken some sips, I feel like I'm able to say a few things about this tea. So, as we already presumed from the storage, due to the lack of more intense storage aromas, this was stored fairly conservatively. But in this particular case, I'd say it's fine. I'm not detecting any flavors so far in this tea that would need to be further changed or would need to be removed by more intense storage. It's actually quite pleasant so far. At the same time, it's not pleasant as in easygoing or too sweet or something like that. It does have a bit of sweetness, but I'd say the dominating flavors in this particular tea are a certain citrus peel type bitterness. Not quite the same as you'd encounter in, for example, a younger Lauman'e, but a more gentle version of that, in a way. Where the Lauman'e tea citrus peel bitterness is very strong and punchy and upfront, this one is a bit more subdued, a bit more relaxed, maybe a bit more comfortable even for some people. I guess it's kind of the bitterness isn't the main actor, but it's playing a supporting role, and it's doing a good job of that. In addition to that, there is a certain woodiness to this tea. I think we also got that in the smell earlier, a bit of wood, a bit of resin, that kind of stuff. We have to watch that woody note, how it develops over the next couple of steeps, because that flavor note in particular can sometimes be sort of a double-edged sword. It's, in my opinion, a very good kind of note to have that contributes to the overall flavor profile and to some extent even the textural appearance of the tea. But I've also had instances of woody notes in tea that didn't end up being particularly good. So far, however, my impression of this one in particular is quite positive. Okay, and that's the first steep done. Now at the bottom of the cup, I'm getting a bit more sweetness. Those wood and citrus peel notes are still there, but it's producing a fairly balanced picture overall. Let's see what Paul is saying here. Have you maybe tried to play Gaoshan Lui Shui? I have not, no. Yeah, it's for nannuoshan, the videos don't usually have music, it's just text and people talking. Personally, I also prefer that to some extent. Obviously, there are gonna be quiet moments and stuff, but given how tea tends to be a more relaxed thing, I don't think it's necessary to always have some kind of sonic inputs at every second of the video, if that makes sense. Alright, first steep is done. I'm just gonna pour the second one in right away. We don't want our water to get too cold when we're drinking Sheng Pu'er. One thing I can say about Changtai tea in general is that a lot of Changtai material is, I'd say, a bit more gentle than the material you'd find in, for example, an early 2000s Dai or Jaguan production. As a result of that, when it comes to my personal preference, while I do like more intensely stored versions of teas like Dai and Jaguan, when it comes to Changtai, somewhat lighter storage is often better. Gabriele just booked a flight to Berlin and he's planning to come to Munich as well. Yes, I would love to do a live stream together with you. We should absolutely do that. Okay. Second steep, still underway. Hopefully it'll be done soon. I haven't actually had a ton to drink overall yet today, so in addition to wanting to drink this tea, I'm also feeling quite thirsty in general. That's an interesting idea, Paul. I might look into that at some point. Alright. Time to decant this second steep. The color is still the same as it was before, like this orangish hue. Maybe amber in some way. Let's see if anything changed about the flavor of this. Okay. No real changes detectable so far. The second steep tends to be a bit more intense, of course, because now the leaves have opened up, so usually when I steep tea, obviously I don't measure like seconds or anything, but just going by feel, I try to aim for about the same steep time as the first steep, sometimes even a bit shorter, depending on what the compression level of the tea was like. In this steep so far, the citrus peel bitterness is a bit more prominent. The texture is now a bit more viscous than it was on the first steep. I'm getting a slight amount of astringency, but not a lot. Just a bit to create like that slightly drying feeling in the mouth. Gabriele just mentioned that they added new fresh green tea from the last spring harvest on the site last night. So for those of you that enjoy green teas, please do go check that out as well. I for one do, so I'm probably gonna have a look after the stream. Okay, this is very interesting. The sweetness I got towards the bottom of the cup in the previous steep now feels a lot more upfront. I'm getting it like right after the tea goes into my mouth. And only after that I'm getting that woodiness and those citrus peel notes. But the sweetness kind of persists throughout the entire drinking experience, if you will. Yeah, this tea is quite pleasant so far. I think people that sort of enjoy this kind of semi-aged Sheng, but that haven't had a particularly good experience with like Dai or Jaguan that was stored quite in quite dry conditions, might enjoy this for a nice change of pace. Because while this I think was stored in fairly similar conditions to those kind of teas, this is better with that storage. Yeah, this is quite nice. I'm gonna take a bit more time, do a third steep of this, and after that third steep, we can get into the history of the Changtai Tea Factory for a bit. In the meantime, I hope everyone here is enjoying whatever you're drinking right now, or if you're not drinking anything, I hope you're just enjoying the show. Also, please let me know if you prefer this particular setup compared to what I was doing previously. Personally, I think I have a nice and comfortable corner here that I can use for streaming, so I'm quite happy to do this. Let's see what chat is saying. Laoshan green. That's interesting. Okay, I'm probably gonna reboil my water after this third steep, so there's gonna be some rumbling noises on stream. Unfortunately, with the way I've got this set up, I'm actually quite far away from my computer, and I'm using this laptop here to read chat. But all of my streaming, like all of the control I have over the stream, would be at my actual PC. So I can't do things like muting my microphone or showing images. In other words, let's hope we're not gonna encounter any technical difficulties. Howell just had Baimudan. Preparing for Da Hong Pao. Ah, so you're going for multiple teas today. That's also nice. I usually tend to keep it to one session a day, but it really depends on what I'm drinking. Like when I'm having Sheng Pu'er, I definitely don't do more than one session. And when I'm having stuff like green tea or yellow tea, it entirely depends on my mood. Okay, third steep is going in. Very nice. Okay, so this is continuing in a good way. The astringency seems a bit more prominent now. Hard to say whether that's down to the material or to the way I'm steeping right now. I tend to go for slightly longer steep times to just get like more out of my leaves. So it might be interesting to contrast the way this tea tastes with my steeping method and someone else's steeping method, for example, someone who prepares it in a gaiwan and does like really short but frequent steeps. It's always interesting to see sort of the range you get out of a tea by preparing it in different ways. What kind of steeping style do you all tend to go for? Do you prefer the like short steep time, many steeps, or do you prefer something that's more similar to my approach, or do you maybe just do something completely different? Mm. Yeah, I'm enjoying this so far. This is a pleasant, comfortable tea. It's friendly, but at the same time not too friendly. It's got some things that keep it interesting, but it's not overbearing in any way. It's a very polite tea in that sense, if you will. And in its own way, that's kind of cool because I feel like it can be difficult to find pu'er that behaves in that way. Just a tea that's still interesting, but not, yeah, not overbearing in any way. Because pu'er tends to be a bit extreme sometimes, I feel, which, don't get me wrong, is not a bad thing. I mean, I absolutely love pu'er, and I love both the highs and the lows that come with it. I enjoy these sort of extreme tea experiences, if you will, but at the same time, for a tea to really be diverse and to cover all sorts of bases, it needs to have something like this too. It can't just be like one extreme or the other. There also needs to be something in the middle. Expected random used to brew at high ratio with flash brews and still does it sometimes, but a bigger teapot and lower ratio with longer steep times is quite nice. Yeah, I kind of feel a similar way. Obviously, like with 120 milliliters and 7 grams, I'm still not at like the really large vessel and lower ratio times, but just steeping for longer overall, I'm not sure whether it actually does, but it gives me the feeling that the overall impression I get of the tea is a bit more complete, if you will. In some ways, that also may make it a bit less dynamic over the course of different steeps, but in my opinion, that's not a bad thing. Alright, see you later then, Gabriele. Enjoy your run. Okay. So, I finished the third steep. I'm gonna reboil my water now. Please bear with me for a minute. It might get a bit loud, which I am very sorry for. But once the water is reboiled, let's start talking about the Changtai factory for a bit. Alright, I hope you can still kind of hear me through this. I know it's probably a bit loud, at least that's kind of what I can see on my recording thing. Let me know if this is too bad. If it's a problem, I'll try to find ways to better accommodate that in the future. In the meantime, Forgotten Brew said they prefer flash brewing, but from time to time they forget it, hence the name, I assume. Okay, so fourth steep is going in. I promised to talk a bit about the Changtai factory today, so I'd say while I'm waiting for this and while we keep drinking here, I'm gonna get into that for a bit. So, the Changtai factory was founded and started producing tea in 1999, right before the turn of the millennium. It's focused mostly on productions with material from Iwu early on, and the famous Changtai Hao production line that ran from initially ran from like 1999 to 2004 garnered them a lot of good reputation. Well, I think it actually ran longer, but like those first 5 years are what's commonly known as the like golden age of Changtai Hao, if you want to call it that. The teas from that time period are usually regarded as like very high quality stuff that a lot of people enjoy. And some of these Changtai teas from that era were also quite hyped by well-known like tea collectors and tea vendors at the time, which led to a very good reputation for the company. As a result of that, they also grew very rapidly. Now, this wasn't the only line of teas they produced. They also made the Chen Hong Chang line, which focused on teas from the 6 famous tea mountains. All of these were single origin productions, if I remember correctly, and they were usually known for high quality material. There was also a third production line, which is the one we're trying today, the Changtai Hao production line. It was started in 2001 and later then turned into the most, let's say, mainstream line of Changtai productions. Beyond these 3 lines, there are many more, but these 3 are sort of like the main ones during the early era of Changtai. This positive reputation that they built from 1999 to 2004 then led to them obviously expanding by a lot and really ramping up their production value, especially from like the mid-2000s onwards. I think it was 2004 or 2005 when they were officially turned into the Changtai Group, just because they had grown so large at that point. If you want to know more about that, if I remember correctly, the video that Gabriele and Dimitri did together actually had a few bits of information about that. The one where they tried the Changtai 642. Now, during this time in 2005, Changtai then bought a bunch of other tea factories and also started producing there. So they like really ramped up the production volume. They produced a lot of tea during that time. And the Changtai Hao line was essentially their workhorse, if you want to call it that. Most of the tea they produced at that point, if I remember correctly, was under that line. And these were like their standard issue productions. So you could compare the Changtai Hao productions to sort of the like numbered teas from other factories. The Changtai Hao line still existed during that time, but it was shifted more and more towards being a line of very like high-end and premium productions. In its own way, that kind of caused issues because the Changtai Hao line is obviously what Changtai had a very good reputation for, so a lot of people wanted that, but at one point the prices for these Changtai Hao teas became so astronomical that the people who would wanted to drink them couldn't really afford them anymore. Which really is quite unfortunate in its own way. That being said, if you're interested in the Changtai Hao Changtai line, if I remember correctly, there may be some Changtai Hao teas coming up in the context of the Pu'er project. So that's yet another reason to keep your eyes peeled on the NANNUOShan website. Nice. This is still going strong. Still a pleasant tea. Now, what would I say if I had to compare this to other Changtai teas I've tried? It's kind of difficult to say. For one, because of the storage. Like I mentioned, this was stored quite conservatively. Other Changtais I've tried have either been stored more intensely, or there's a couple of Changtai teas I bought on eBay from somebody who bought them like 10 years ago and has been storing them in Germany in like their living room for the past 10-ish years. And those, let's say, didn't make much progress during that time. Unfortunately, I haven't had this particular tea from different storage yet, but there's another version of this with a brown wrapper that has material from Jingu rather than Iwu. And I've had that one from fairly intense storage, but like I outlined previously, that kind of storage is just too much for some Changtai teas, and that Jingu one was like that. It was kind of noticeable how the material like fell apart in a way due to the intense storage conditions. So this, on the other hand, I think keeps a lot of the things that make it interesting. The storage for this was definitely chosen properly, so to speak. Yeah. Is it comparable in flavor to any other Changtai tea I've had? That's probably a very good question. Hmm. Tough to say. It is kind of comparable to the what is it? A 2005 Changtai Hao that I've had at one point that was also made from Iwu material. Unfortunately, I can't quite remember the full name of that production right now, but it's the one with the like brown wrapper and green stamp and all in seal script, if I recall correctly. But this is a fine tea. It's not fine as in like it's making any compromises or anything like that. It's nice. That's what it is. It's relatively approachable but still interesting. It's comfortable. It doesn't overwhelm you in any way. There's nothing about this tea that I would consider unpleasant. It's all in all very clean storage. I think the material used is quite decent. Oh, I'm not sure if I if this is gonna work if I do it here, but like I just had the sun hit my cup and there was this beautiful orange color. Really nice. I think this is a well-produced tea for a reasonable price, and a good introduction to what a semi-aged Changtai tea would look like. Obviously, it's like already fairly old, being from 2005, but I would put this in the category of semi-aged just by virtue of its conservative storage. And I think this tea, in the way it presents itself to me right now, is something that I would recommend others to experience as well. So even if you don't want to commit to like a full bing of this, I think at the very least it's probably worth getting like a 50-gram bag to have a few sessions to get to know this tea and see what you can learn from it in a way. Especially if you have some other factory teas from around that age and with similar storage, it might be worth a comparison. As I outlined before, I think this will make for an interesting comparison with a conservatively stored Dai or Jaguan from around the same time. And it will also make an interesting comparison with other Changtai teas. So if any of you still have some of your Changtai teas somewhere, by all means, give this a try and compare, especially if you have more intensely stored ones. Like if you've had any that were in, let's say, like Malaysia, Guangdong, or Taiwan. Compare them to this one and figure out what you think is better and try to think about like what that means. Or maybe not try to figure out what's better, but figure out what you enjoy more. Because that's probably the point rather than figuring out what's better. Doing these kind of comparisons will help you to understand what exactly it is that you like about certain teas, I think. And if you have the chance, obviously it would be even better to compare like the exact same production from two different storage sites. But that's always easier said than done, unfortunately. But if it's possible, I'd love to do something like setting up a storage comparison tasting set or something like that for nannuoshan one day. It's probably just gonna be a lot of work to source everything. But maybe we can do it one day. Maybe. In the meantime, is any one of you watching actually having Changtai right now? Have any of you had Changtai Sheng before? And if so, what did you think about them? I'm just waiting for this steep number 6 to finish. I'm probably gonna do one more after that one, and that's probably gonna be it for the stream. A bit of a shorter one today, but I hope you're still enjoying it. I'm curious to hear though whether you prefer like the kind of streams I did before this one, where it's more about a concrete topic like poor storage and sort of really diving into that and trying to get some explanations, or if you also like this kind of stream where I just kind of casually drink a tea and talk about it and give maybe a bit of information about the tea and the producer on the side. Expected Random would like the storage tasting set. One of the more interesting aspects of Pu'er is the vast differences between a Kunming stored tea and a Hong Kong traditional stored one. Yes, I absolutely agree. It's really cool to see the differences that storage can make, and it's also important, I think, to figure out not just what kind of storage you like in general, but also what kind of storage works best for what kind of tea. So in my example, I tend to prefer more intense storage, as I've probably outlined a couple of times on various streams. I like to go for like Taiwan or Hong Kong most of the time. But in the case of some teas, that it's not correct to store them in such an intense way if you want an enjoyable product at the end. And I think something like this Changtai is a good example of that. I'm not sure I would have enjoyed it as much if this had been stored in Taiwan or Hong Kong. Alright. I'm just gonna decant this right away, do one fairly long final steep while we're talking here. I really love the color on these late steeps. Yeah, this tastes nice. I just noticed the lighting. I'm uh sorry that it's a bit intense. I'm right next to my window, so the sun is basically shining directly into my room. Where was this one stored? Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if I mentioned it. Give me a moment to find out for you. I think Gabriele told me at some point, but I admittedly forgot. It's not one of the typical storage locations, so it wasn't stored in like Kunming, it wasn't stored in Guangdong, Hong Kong, or Malaysia, if I recall correctly. What was it? I don't think it was stored in Shanghai, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm just gonna look it up. Give me a moment. Where was it stored? To be honest, I don't know. I'll try to provide that information after the stream. I'll maybe post it in chat here or as a comment underneath the video, because I'm gonna talk to Gabriele afterwards and just ask him. But regardless of where in particular it was stored, the storage is definitely quite dry, and that's fine. With dry storage, I find that you always run the risk of storing your tea in a way that makes it end up taste kind of confusing. Maybe that sounds weird, but it's kind of like the aged taste in some teas that I've had that were stored in like Kunming, for example. I've felt like the aged notes that it was slowly developing were kind of conflicting with the fresher notes that were preserved by this sort of conservative storage, and it wasn't really like balanced or harmonious overall. But this tea doesn't have that issue. So it is dry stored, but the balance of flavors, as it is the way it is right now, is actually good. So I'd recommend this as a good example of conservative dry storage. Even if you are the kind of person that says, oh, I don't really like dry storage, I prefer more intensely stored tea, I'd say give this a try, and maybe you'll actually learn something about yourself. Okay. This final steep should be done soon. I think this tea probably has like 1 or 2 more steeps in it with the way I'm steeping it right now. But those steeps would probably be like 10 to 15 minutes each, and I think this stream will be fine if it's about an hour long. So I'll probably enjoy these once the stream is over. Probably gonna give this another minute or so. Let's see. Is there anything else I can tell you all? Thinking. Oh, is everything alright with the stream? It kind of looked like it stopped on my end for a moment. Okay, looks like we're back, so that's good. When coronavirus is over, we should have an open mic night at NANNUOShan Tea Shop. Maybe. Seems like an interesting idea for sure. We also had the NANNUOShan Tea Weekend back in 2019. That's actually how I initially got in touch with Gabriele and the NANNUOShan crew, because before that I wasn't really aware of NANNUOShan, but then one of the friends from my local tea group told me about the weekend, and I decided to go there together with a friend of mine. And we had such a good time there, or I at least did, that we ended up staying in touch. And that's kind of how this whole streaming thing developed. So doing a weekend like this again is something I would love to do again at some point, and hopefully this whole nightmare is going to end soon so that we'll be able to do more tea drinking in person. Because while enjoying tea by myself, or enjoying tea in, let's say, like a sort of performative manner like I'm doing right now, where I'm sitting here and talking to you all and describing my experience, is very fun and enjoyable in its own right. I don't think anything quite replaces the experience of sitting at a tea table together with people and talking about our impressions and experiences together. Alright. This is the final steep. The tea is getting a bit lighter now. The citrus peel notes are kind of pulling back. The sweetness is pulling back again. The woodiness is probably the note that sort of dominates now. But yeah, this is a very enjoyable tea. I'd recommend it. I'd also recommend ordering maybe a couple of other Changtais along with this one at the same time, just so you have a slightly broader range to sample from. Oh, I'm sorry if you can hear that siren. This was a nice session. I'm definitely feeling more awake now than I did at the start of the stream. I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my day. I also enjoyed this just to, like, be sure. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to announce before we end the stream. I'm not just doing streams for nannuoshan, I actually even tried my hand at making a video for the channel. That one's, I think, probably gonna be released sometime next month. Because unfortunately I won't be able to stream myself next month, as I'm gonna have some more university exams that I need to prepare for at the end of August. But once that's over, I'm gonna be back with more activity. So hopefully you're gonna get one, maybe even 2 videos from me during that time. And then we'll probably see each other again for another live stream in September or so. We are getting close to the 1 hour mark. This cup is slowly getting more and more empty. I hope you enjoyed today's stream. I hope you enjoyed the new setup. And I hope I got some of you interested in trying this 2005 Changtai Hao. If you end up getting some of it, I'd love to hear your impressions in the comments on this video after it gets archived. And I also hope you'll enjoy the rest of the Sheng Pu'er project. You're certainly gonna hear more from me in the context of that. But for now, I think it's time to end this stream. Thank you all for joining. This was Sigi's Pu'er box for nannuoshan. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you're gonna have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.